Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining our webinar today. We're going to have a UI showcase on the dark magic of workflow exploration. My name is Melina Valentine, and I am a team member here at Temporal. With that, I am excited to introduce you to my colleague and today's speaker, Alex Tideman. He's been with Temporal for 2 years now and is currently a staff engineer on our developer tools team. Alex works on making Temporal UI a valuable tool for understanding and debugging workflows, which he'll talk about in today's presentation with live demos. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Alex.
Well, I'm really excited today to showcase a bunch of different updates we have through the UI for Temporal. So just kind of want to give kind of the backstory of what these updates are and why we did them. And then we're going to dive in and look at just a whole bunch of different workflows. And they're kind of progress from really simple workflows to really, really complex workflows. And it doesn't really matter what these workflows do, but we're just going to take a look at, understanding what these workflows are happening, like what's happening in real time with them, and why this UI is important for debugging those workflows. So, really the backstory behind these updates is that, Temporal is so flexible and it's a durable execution platform that, you can use workflows for really anything. And it makes it really challenging to create a UI that, anybody can use, but is also really specific for whatever unique workflow you're looking at. So we've done a lot of iterations, gone through a lot of different designs, had a lot of different feedback. And what we want is an experience where you can go to a workflow and just look at it and just stare at it and it makes sense and you understanding what's happening right now with that workflow. So that was really the goal with these updates, is to really give you that experience where you don't need to know a ton of different information about the event history, about all the different things with Temporal. You can just go to the UI and be like, okay, I have an idea of what's happening. I understand what's happening right now. So that's really what we wanted to create with this experience. So we're going to go over that new UI. We're going to go over our dark mode, which we're really excited to bring. Everyone wants dark mode, and that's been super fun to build. So we're going to show you how to access that, and then also some improvements around child workflows as well. So let's just dive into that and look at some workflows. All right, so here you're landing on our UI, and I'm using our open source UI, but this is going to look very similar in cloud as well. And the first thing you want to do if you want to turn on this new workflow execution UI is go to the labs mode button. And so that's at the bottom left here, and you can just toggle that on and off just by clicking that button. And doesn't matter where you are, you can turn that on and off. So let's go ahead and just leave it off for now, and we're going to jump into a workflow here. And this is currently what we have in our UI. And here, you see summary information. We have inputs and results. We have our timeline view right here. And then we also have the event history where you can view all the events and you can go to compact mode and look at those event groups. So we're going to go ahead and just toggle this on. And now you're going to see what this new UI looks like. So we have 3 different views here: compact, timeline, and full history. So I just want to walk through each one of these and explain what it is. So compact mode or the compact view is really the simplest view where it is just a sequential order of what's happened in your workflow. So here you can see a whole bunch of things have happened. And first there was this child workflow that occurred, and then a whole bunch of other child workflows occurred at the same time. So it's sequentially ordered horizontally, and things that are scheduled at the same time are stacked vertically. So we had one thing happen here, and then a whole bunch of things happened at the same time. So compact viewed really just gives you that sequential order of things that are occurring in your workflow as it's running. And it really doesn't have anything to do with clock time or worrying about specific durations of events. It's just, here's what's happening, and it gives you some icons and colors to give you an indication of what's happening. And so this kind of brings the first thing into this UI is icons and colors. And we're using icons and colors for a few different things here. So icons are really giving you a sense of what is it that I'm looking at. So in this workflow, we have a bunch of child workflows. So you can see these icons. These are child workflows that are occurring. We're going to look at a bunch of other workflows and give you a better sense of what those icons are. So don't worry about what all of them are right now. So compact mode, very simple. It's just a quick glance. Here's what's happening. And we'll look at another workflow that shows you what happens if there's multiple of the same things. And what compact view does for that is it basically collapses all the same activities and it gives you a count. So if there's lots of the same things happening, condenses that down, but then you can expand it and open up. Let's look at timeline now. Now, timeline is similar to what we have in our current timeline view, but it's much improved. And what timeline view is now, it gives you that sense of actual durations and hard clock times. So you have an axis here that's the start time and the end time. And then you have these different ticks that give you a sense of relative duration between things. And so here you can see as we transition between the two, okay, now I get a sense of what took a little bit longer to execute here. And we'll look at some other workflows that'll show you, you actually get a sense of what is the latency between a scheduled event, a started event, and a completed event. And you don't get that right now in our current timeline view, but in this new one, you definitely do. You get a sense of what are those latencies. So here, they're all stacked vertically, and then you get a sense of, okay, what took how long? And so you can see here this workflow retry activity took the longest by far, and then it completed, and this workflow then was done. And then we get into the full history mode. And this is really that view for getting into the full details of an entire workflow. So seeing all the workflow tasks, all the different kinds of events that can occur within a workflow. So this is everything. This is your full event history. And you can go through and see, okay, this main line represents the workflow and all of its workflow tasks. And then you have these dots that represent all those other events. That could be activities, child workflows, signals, timers, things like that. But then we connect the related events here with these lines. So now you can kind of see the patterns of events as they're going through the history. And you can click on one of these, and it's going to open up the details of that specific event in the event history. So you're going to get all the details of that event, and you're also going to get all the details of the events in that event group. So here it's going to give you, okay, this is the child workflow execution initiated, but then you can really quickly see, okay, what happened in the started and completed events as well. You're not jumping around trying to find that information. You can see then all the colors kind of fade away, and you only get the colors of the connected active events here. So you can kind of follow the lines and say, okay, 25 is that started event, and you can click that if you want. And now that's the highlighted event here. And then you can keep following that down and say, okay, here's green, here's the completed event, and now that's highlighted. So the green dots here represent the status of the event. So obviously green means completed. We have red for failed, and then there's timed out, which is orange. So the colors really try and indicate what happened. Did it complete successfully? Did it fail? Did it time out? So colors really want to stand out to say like, hey, this is what happened to this thing, where icons are, what is this thing? We use color as a secondary marker for what is this thing as well. So you can see here, this teal color is the child workflow. So we use color in a couple different ways, but the main thing that should stand out with color here is telling you what happened. What is the status of this thing? All right, so let's go look at a little bit more complicated workflow and get a kind of a better sense of what's happening there. So I've got one of these already bookmarked, and we're going to go look at this. So here in this compact mode, you can see, okay, there's more of a linear progression of things that's happened in this workflow. We kicked off a child workflow. There was a couple of signals. There was an activity, a couple of more signals, and then another activity. And then when you open these up in both the timeline and the compact mode, it gives you this more condensed summary details. So basically what it does is it gives you all the information of the scheduled, started, and completed or failed or whatever, all the events in that event group are all kind of condensed down into this one summary. So here in an activity, you can see, okay, what's the input of this activity? What's the result? And then all the different information that happened throughout schedule started and completed. So what was the attempt, request ID, schedule start timeouts, all that information you care about. So the compact view gives you kind of the quick snapshot. It doesn't give you every single field within every single event. It's just really what you care about. So then a cool thing that I think is super valuable now in this view as well is if you go to a child workflow and you click on it, now you can actually see that child workflow in line here. You're not navigating away and trying to figure out, okay, what's happening in this child workflow? You can actually view the child workflow timeline right here in this view. So you can sit and open up child workflows and hey, I can look and kind of get a snapshot of what's happening within that child workflow, which is really helpful. You can just look through a bunch of different child workflows. You're not leaving the page. You can just kind of see what's happening. So here we can see there's a couple of pending activities. And so this is another visual indicator is these dashed lines. They give you a sense of what's pending. So this purple moving pending line, that's a pending activity. If you see a red dashed line that's moving, that means that activity is pending, but it's retrying. It's on an attempt higher than one. So that's when you get a sense of, okay, something's gone wrong with this activity. It's retrying over and over again. That red color kind of stands out with that dash saying, hey, something's up, it's retrying. And we're going to go look at an example of that, so don't worry. All right, so then if you go to this timeline view, then you can kind of see now the same thing of, okay, what is the different durations of these things? And it gives you a sense of, okay, that child workflow took the longest to complete, and there's a bunch of short things that happened in between there. And then same for this workflow history. You get a sense of, okay, there's just kind of not a lot of things happening at once, but there are some things that took a lot longer with these long lines. All right, so then let's look at another one, and this is getting a little bit more complicated. More things are happening in this workflow. So looking at this one, now we can see that kind of condensed compact view where we've grouped, okay, there was 25 of these same events. So now I can expand these open then, and I can click on any of these to look at the details of those. But this is really helpful if there's lots of the same things happening all at once. It can get really busy to view all those things. So this kind of compacts it all down and just gives you a count so you can get a high level understanding of, okay, 25 things are happening here. There's 10 over here. If you want to open them up, you certainly can and look at them. But this compact view is really nice when there's lots of the same things happening here. And if, lots of them are occurring, you can scroll to the right and left as well. So looking at this timeline, now you can really get a better sense of the latencies here between scheduled and started and completed. So you can look through these activities, and really what we care about here is that latency between started and completed. So this green line it stands out more because that's really the latency you care about. This one's a little bit more opaque, and this is a little less important of the latency between scheduled and started. But now you can kind of go through this workflow and really get a quick understanding of latency between your events, which is really helpful. So this is all just a whole bunch of activities happening in this workflow, and that's all that's happening. And then you can come to the full history view and kind of get this view as well of, okay, we have a workflow task. It kicked off all of these activities at the same time. You can see they kind of finish at random different points. And then another workflow task is completed. That kicks off a whole bunch of different activities. So this full event history gives you that sense of concurrency as well. All right, so let's take a look at now something that I think is really important too, and that's the liveness of the workflow. So if we go ahead and look at one of these, and we're just going to look at this compact view first. Here you can see this one's pending, and then this one's retrying. But you can see how that automatically changed. We're polling now for these events, so there's no like automatic refresh of everything every 15 seconds. As events occur, the UI is automatically updated in all these different views. So it's a real-time sense of exactly what's happening. So if we go to this timeline view now, you can see this workflow is running as the time kind of expands out here. These accesses are updated, and the duration shrink based on, the exact times that are happening here. So it gives you a lot better sense of like what's happening right now in this workflow. And you can just sit here and watch, and you can say, okay, I knew this was on attempt 2 here out of max 10, and you can just sit and wait and say, okay, I'm just gonna wait and make sure this thing actually completes. So here in a few seconds, this retrying activity should then complete, and then it's gonna go to green, and you're gonna know, okay, that finished. As well as the workflow is then updated to the correct status. So that's flipped over, and now you know this workflow is completed. So you don't have to do any like toggling or refreshing of the page. You can just sit here and watch the events occur, and it's all in real time. And I think that's really important for understanding workflows, is just having that liveness and knowing, okay, I know exactly what's happening right now. So that's kind of what the pending part of this is being able to see the red dashed lines. I know, okay, this thing is retrying this pending activity over and over again. And you can click on those and you know exactly what the attempt is, when the last heartbeat details are, and kind of what are those last failures. You have all that information just at your fingertips if you want to look at it. And when you're in the full history mode, you still have that same kind of sense of pending and retrying as well. We do these highlights of colors here in the full history too. So those really stand out in any of the views. You know something's happening. All right, so let's go back and look at this one that has more of kind of multiple different things going on. We've got a child workflow, we've got a signal, we've got activities. Some of the other useful features here then are being able to filter. So you can come in here and you're like, you know what? I don't really care about these signals. I want to filter those out. So you can do, multiple different types of events. You can filter all of them out. You can show anything you want. So if there's only certain things that you care about, you can just filter those out and just show activities if you want. So that's available on any of the different views as well. So let's go look at something that's a little bit crazier. We're going to go and look in this namespace, and we're going to look at something that's got a pretty massive event history. It's getting up there. So there's lots of things happening here. And this is just one that has a lot of activities and a lot of child workflows. And you can, really quickly see, okay, something's wrong with this workflow. There's a lot of green, but there's also a lot of red. So just by scanning this workflow, something's going wrong with this workflow. And you can open these up and you'll get a sense of what's the last failure. But if you really want to kind of zoom way out and get kind of that bigger picture, you can actually zoom this out, and then you actually can scan this whole thing and get kind of a really quick sense of a huge event history of everything that's happening. So this can get really useful if you have, big event histories, long workflows, and lots of different things are happening. You can zoom way out and get this big picture mental map of what this workflow is. And I think that's pretty helpful as well, depending on what workflow you're looking at. So if we wanted to look at the compact mode, you can do the same thing. You can zoom way in and way out. And here you can see that, okay, here's the 1,000 activities we've got. You can scan through this compact mode and see about every 10th one is failing. And you can open those up and check all that out. All right. So in addition to, seeing this updated UI, what we've also done is really slim down kind of that initial experience on this page. We've removed a lot of things and gotten rid of the accordions, and it's a lot slimmer experience. So you're just looking at the things that matter. So you get the summary information of, what is the start and end times and durations of the workflow type and the run, the task queue, history size and state transitions, and inputs and outputs. You don't have to like click to expand. It's just what you want to see immediately right in front of you, and then the visualizations. So what we've done is we've moved a few different things. So now we have our own dedicated relationships tab. So here you can view all the relationships, whether it's parent workflows, child workflows, previous or next, if they're continuous new. Those all have their own tabs now. And because of some of the server updates as well, we now have a live query of all those children. So these statuses are now exactly the current status of all those child workflows. They're not the stale statuses of whenever this workflow was completed. So that's a big improvement too, is like all these child workflows, you know exactly what their statuses, their current statuses are, even if this parent workflow is completed. What we've also done is moved the search attributes out of the summary, and we have our own metadata tab. And really, these workflows don't have much useful information in them. But if you use search attributes in Memo, you can go view all that metadata right here in this tab. So we've moved some of those things out of that initial history tab, and now they have their own separate tabs if you want to go view all those different things. All right, so that's what this new visualization is. You can sit on this page, and obviously it's a big change. So we want to give you the chance to get used to it and switch back and forth between the two. So you can sit here and toggle between the two and get a better understanding of like, oh, I'm used to this. I want to see this. What was that in the old view? And then kind of mentally map it back to where it is in the new view. So you can toggle those back and forth. I think what I've gotten used to is once I've gotten, acquainted with this new UI, it's no looking back. I really enjoy using this view, and I hope you do too. But we would love to hear your feedback and what you think. But definitely it's a big change, so we want to give you that chance to go back to the old UI if you wish. All right, so a few other exciting things that we want to talk about are dark mode. So this new UI that I just showed you is available in cloud today, right now, behind this labs mode. So you can go on cloud.temporal.io, turn on labs mode, and you can use that today. What I'm going to talk about next is dark mode. This is only available in open source, but it will be coming to cloud very soon. But essentially what dark mode is if you turn on labs, now you're going to have this day and night mode, and you can toggle on dark mode. So now the entire app has our night theme, and you can go to any of the pages and it's going to be dark mode. I know a lot of people love dark mode. I think it looks great on all of our different pages. So that's all it is. You can toggle that on any page to go between the two themes. But again, right now that's just an open source, but it'll be coming to cloud shortly here. And that's been really fun to work on. And I think, once you get used to this new UI, it's really nice to have it in dark mode as well. When you're doing those late night debugging of workflows, you'll be able to switch to dark mode. It's easy on your eyes. One other thing I want to showcase is some of the updates to child workflows. So we have that new relationships tab that gives you all the current children of that workflow and their current statuses. But we also have added that to the child or the workflow list here. So now we have this new button here. And by default, you're going to see this show child workflows toggled on. So what that means is this workflow list is going to give you parent workflows, it's going to give you child workflows. Doesn't matter. It's going to have all those there. And you can see now I have about 70,000 workflows. If I toggle this off, now you can see that count went way down. And now we're only showing parent workflows. So any child workflow that has a parent is not going to show up on this list. And that's really useful. A lot of people just care about the parent. They want to be able to go and look at the child workflows. But really the thing they care about is the parent. But it is handy here. If you do want to see the children of that specific parent workflow, you can click on this button. And now the 15 children here, we give you the count of how many children, and the children are grouped under that parent right in the list. So if you do really want to, check on what are the status of these children, you can click on these buttons, and that'll go get the child workflows, and it'll give you the status and the links to all of that. And I think that's really valuable for a lot of different people monitoring these workflows. They want to just see the parents, but if they want to dive and look into those children, they can really quickly. So this is available now. Labs or not, it's on both, and it's in open source and it's in cloud. You can go use this in cloud today. And what we've also done is, we've kind of grouped everything that was over here into the right in this new menu. So you can go and you can filter some add some filters if you want to just see running. And let's say it's just of a workflow type, you can go and view that actual query input right there. So that's the toggle for that. You can configure the columns that you want to see. So if you want to move the run ID over here, and let's say you want to see the execution duration, you can go and add those right here. It's no longer hidden way off to the right of the table. It's all in line, and it's always accessible through this button. So you can configure your workflow list and all the different columns here. I always like to have type here. That makes it easier for me. But that just configures your workflow list and all the different columns, and then you can download the JSON of exactly what you've queried. So that is kind of what the showcase I wanted to show you of all those new updates. I think they're really, really useful. I think it's great to just dive into it and kind of look at all your different workflows and see how they look in these new views. And I think really what you're going to quickly understand is that you can just come to this and look at it, and you're going to go, okay, I get it now. I kind of can see really quickly what's happening here. And if I want to know more about it, I can click on this and say, okay, I can drill in. But you should just be able to come to this page, pick the view that you're most comfortable with, and just understand what's happening. And that's really truly the goal here, is that it's just a better experience for understanding your workflow, but also debugging, giving you these visual cues of retrying. Especially, we want to give you these pending and retrying cues that you can say, okay, I know I'm waiting for this thing. I want to make that really clear in this UI. And if something's wrong, I want to be able to just click on that and see the details of the last failure, know what went wrong with it, and be able to just debug it really quickly from those messages right in the details. So I think this is a big improvement in that we don't have a whole bunch of separate areas of different information, whether it's like the pending activities kind of have their own accordion or their own tab. Those are all in line now with their associated events. So everything's together. It's a much more cohesive picture of what your workflow is doing. And I think it helps a lot, having everything in line and associated in one visualization. And just depending on your comfort level of temporal, you'll kind of figure out what view makes more sense to you. If you're just a beginner, you just kind of want to understand what's happening, you can go to compact. If you really care about the latencies and the times of all these different things, you're going to use the timeline. And I find the timeline one really, really helpful when things get pretty crazy. There's lots of different things going on. Timeline's great for just seeing that breakdown of when it happened and how long it took. And the full history then is really for the low level power user that wants to know all the different events and all the details associated with them. You can use that full history for debugging at that lower level. But please try it. Let us know. We would love to hear your feedback. It is a big change, but I think it's something that we're really excited about and want to get in the hands of all our developers out there using Temporal. And let us know what you think. We like it a lot so far. So thank you very much.
Thank you for the presentation. That was really helpful. So we do have some questions that have been submitted, so we can start going over those if you would like. Might want to keep your screen share up just in case people want to see exactly what the answer is to their question, but we'll see as we go through them. So the first one, what is the best view to see all activities that have failed and are retrying? Is it the temporal UI, or should we export metrics to our observability tool?
I think both. I'm not an observability master, and I don't go into that part of our stack, but that's obviously a great tool for seeing, like, especially lots of activities over different workflows. That's a great tool for that. But for a specific workflow, I think it's great to be able to go to our UI, and especially if all you're caring about is like failing or retrying activities, you can go and look at this and just filter by just activities. And I think that's a great way of doing it, of just being like, okay, all I care about really here are activities, and you just filter by that. And then you can see red are failed and retrying are the red dashed lines. So I think for specific single workflows, the UI is fantastic for viewing those failing or retrying activities. It's really, really clear through the UI what's happening.
Thank you for going over that. Next question. What version of the UI are we seeing, and when will it be available to use in a self-hosted temporal deployment?
Yeah, so this is in release 2.26.2. So that release has already been created, and that will be in our next CLI release as well, which is going to be happening very, very soon. And it'll also be in our new next Docker Compose release. So it'll be, it's available out there right now. That Docker image for this UI is available, but all the different ways you consume it, those will be updated this week as well. That's the plan, is to have the CLI updated, and then Docker Compose will also be updated with this version. So open source should be able to use it as well.
Great, thank you. All right, next question. When you use a parent close policy of abandon, is it expected that child workflows stop in a blue state from the parent workflow view? Sounds like this was updated in relationships as you shared, but asking about the compact timeline.
Yeah, so I think this would be like, we're in here and let's go ahead and cancel this. Oh, that was the wrong one. Let's pick this one. Let's maybe terminate this. I'm not sure what my parent close policy is, but essentially what you'll see, let's find one that's actually running here. We will, let me find a good one for this. Okay, so that one's completed. So let's go ahead and abandon this one. And so it's blue now. So this child is pending. You can see that's a pending child. It hasn't completed yet. It started, but not completed. So let's go and terminate this. So what you'll see now in the compact view is that this is this is still shown as like this is pending. But if you go to that child workflow, you're going to see it's terminated. But I think that's a great call out in that we should be able to go and fetch, okay, if this thing is terminated, let's go and update those child workflows to show terminated as well. So right now that would just show this is blue as pending, and you can go and look at that specific workflow about what's happening with it. But I think absolutely in future release, we can then go and fetch that child and show, okay, this has been abandoned and terminated as well.
Thank you. So next question comes from someone who said they were having some technical issues, but it might be good to just revisit for anyone else who might have missed this too. And the question is, are these new features available via the lab icon in the bottom left only, or in the bottom left only after an update?
Yes, so you need to have at least this version 2.26.2 to have labs mode. That's when it's toggled on. So yes, so it's behind the labs mode button, the new UI. It's in cloud currently, so you can all go use that in cloud. In open source, you'll need to have 2.26.2.
Great. That also answers the next question about whether it's available in local cluster or if it's only in temporal cloud. So then the next question after that is, will the UI server be available as a standalone binary for self-hosted production deployments?
Um, I mean, currently it is a standalone binary. You can use it as a standalone binary, but the best way to use it as a binary is with the CLI, the temporal CLI. That has the server, temporal server, UI server, everything is a single binary there. But the UI server is a standalone binary as well.
Great. Next question. Any plans to support an activity diagram, maybe by augmenting the workflow history with any decision slash sprint, sprint and join points?
Yeah, so this obviously is, kind of the holy grail, is being able to give a diagram of what's happening. And this is really, really hard to do with temporal because it's all based off of your code. But we have, we're talking about adding some more human readable kind of descriptions and metadata to different events that will allow us to do things like this, and also exploring kind of some different queries where we can have a specific query that you could give it maybe some mermaid format for diagrams and allow you to show a visual representation of kind of more of your code instead of the actual event history. So yes, absolutely, we're exploring a lot of different ways to do that, and stay tuned. I think there's going to be some really cool things we do in that space as well. But that is a hard problem. It's basically based on your code, and so we have to be able to know what's going on with your code to be able to do that. But yes, stay tuned for more about that.
Mhm. All right, last question. I see activity slash workflow types in purple besides each event, which is great. Is there a way to also include the activity slash workflow ID or memo in the same view? For example, I have 100 child workflows with the same type triggered, but 10 of them failed. These are now presented in the same way in the full history mode unless I expand each failure to get the details.
So we do have the event IDs here. So you get the IDs. As far as memo, I'll have to look into that, but you should be able to see the memo if you've set the memo on these activities. But if absolutely, so what we want to do is to be able to expand kind of what's visible on these rows to give you some more information without having to click. So, as you use this, send us some feedback on what you'd like to see here without having to click anything. And I think that especially in the full history mode, being able to use this room to add some useful information, whether it's memo or other things, is going to be key. And we can use up some more of this real estate. So you don't have to click to really understand, okay, this is the thing I'm looking for. But absolutely, we encourage you to send feedback on what you'd love to see there without having to click.
Cool. So we got three more questions that came in after the last question. They look pretty short though, and we still have a little bit of time. So next question is, what is the naming convention of workflows and activities you're using in this demo?
I'm assuming you are like the workflow types and different kind of workflow names that we're using. So these are our canary workflows, where basically it's a suite of workflows that uses all the different features of Temporal. And so this is just kind of the naming convention for those canaries, where basically, retry activity is going to have set off a bunch of activities that retry. Cron workflow is obviously using cron. This is resetting a workflow. So these are just basically all different types of workflows that each specifically do a certain set of features within Temporal. So there's no real this is our standardized naming convention. It just gives you an idea of what's happening within this workflow.
All right. Next question. Are there any plans to support multi-tenancy in an explicit manner, ergo recommended ways of using Temporal as a workflow engine inside a multi-tenant application?
I'm assuming this is for open source. That I'm not sure about. I will have to ask about that one and I'll get back to you. I know there's lots of, different auths that people use, especially with open source, of being able to want to plug in different authentication methods, and multi-tenancy is definitely something that people want with self-hosted and open source. But I will find that out. I currently don't know what the status is for multi-tenancy with self-hosted.
Thanks for letting me know. And then last question, any timeline on the visualization you described for activity diagrams?
I don't have a hard timeline on that. I think it kind of depends on what we go up or what we choose to use those diagrams for. And I think kind of based on, I think it's not going to be one solution. It's going to be multiple things that we try. So depending on what we try, it could be near term, maybe this summer. But I don't have any hard timelines on that, especially because we're not quite certain what we want to go with first or if we want to try all of them at once. But that is something that's actively being worked on right now in development. So it's not a far away pie in the sky thing, but something that's actively being done today.
Good. Thank you. All right. Well, that was all the questions that we had. Thank you again for your presentation, Alex. That was really cool to experience that with someone who's so close to all the recent updates that we've had in our UI. And as a reminder, we're currently celebrating our first milestone of reaching 1,000 customers. So if you want to see some other use cases, hear from real customers and how they use Temporal, see some examples, you can visit temporal.io/in-use. Other than that, thanks again for joining, and we hope you have a good day. Take
Thank
care.
you.